was a successful cave-filled trip.
Yep. Beautiful. That was lovely to stop there.
Yeah. Alright, don't get us killed.
Oh.
Yeah, you're fine.
All right. I do. A beautiful space to rest.
That's true. Okay, so 927 is what we're looking for?
927. So it turns out, reading some of Naomi Joy Kirk's, I think it was either I think it was Shared Porridge or it was her master's thesis. It mentioned that the door of the Englishman's Palace had been removed to 927 Cherokee Road. Why we assume it's in Louisville. There is no Cherokee Road. There is a Cherokee Drive.
Other way around.
So we're thinking
Cherokee Road, no Cherokee
Sorry,
Road.
okay. All right. See, it's all very confusing.
Oh, we passed it already.
931.
Yeah, we passed
really?
it.
Okay. All right.
All right, let's do another loop.
It's right? This kind of work is iterative.
That's right.
And reiterative.
Yeah, if you go take this right, then
working
we'll
on
take it right.
We're going to just go all the way
just
around
do a circle,
again?
yeah.
All right. 927.
Okay, so there's 909. You get a car from the city. You can pull over right here. See a number on the way. 927.
No, that was 927?
Yep.
Looks like it.
That doesn't look like a very old door. There's a guy. That could go.
From Alaska.
Are you in a parking? It looks like it's in an apartment building now. Let's go take a splinter off that door.
Like this, it was very rare that there is an authentic relic, right? Like it's a fragment of the bone of Saint John the Divine or something, right?
Well, it's like in the letter where Keith says he's like the patched garment of the saints.
That's right, exactly.
Replacing parts of it all the time. All right, let's do it. Busy road.
Could be the door.
A lot of traffic on Cherokee Road. Seems a little newer.
Way too far.
That door's pretty weathered. Got an arch. Seems like old. Yeah. What about that top part?
Did it have an arch?
I don't know.
Touch it, just in case.
Yeah. Through that door, negative capability once passed.
What is up with this street and all
Crazy,
this traffic?
right?
I guess they're trying to get off of that. Bardstown gets really ridiculously busy, so this must be a back road. We might just have to assert ourselves.
There was
Seems
no
like
arch.
a pretty modern door.
Yeah.
There could be an arch under there.
So here's what we should try to see if there are other pictures, but I'm a little convinced that, right, I think that right, it's that kind of, right, it has seems to have a pretty big window.
Yeah, it looks much narrower. I don't think it's too wide like that.
Let me see. I think you're right. That is not the door.
No.
No door.
It's a nice door, though. Actually, it's not even a nice door.
But if we simply cleanse the doors of our perception, we would see everything as they were truly, and that is negatively capable.
That's right. Negative capability equals infinity. Well, we failed. But now we can go get a beer.
Where do I go?
Go straight.
Check this out.
Yeah.
So, see the vase or urn?
There's there, of
Look
course.
on the back.
Oh, really? Whoa. Do you know, I do wonder, do you think that Larry Crutcher might have purchased a new stone for the cemetery?
For, you mean
Yeah.
the stone? I
Uh-huh.
don't know. It looks pretty fresh.
It looks very new, right?
Wait,
So no, there are plenty of other Crutchers, of course.
no, but this is him, isn't it?
That is. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so I guess he probably did that.
I have a feeling he did, right? Wow. Yeah.
There's a lot of Keith's family members here.
Are there even?
Well,
You're saying just
I mean,
yeah.
There's a speed. We've got. Oh, and here's George and Georgiana.
Now is John Jeffrey here then as well?
That I don't remember, but he apparently is responsible for making this monument.
John Jeffrey is here. Yeah. Well, the plaque.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at this. Yeah, look. So is John Jeffrey on that side? Is he on there?
No, that's Georgiana.
So George,
Emily.
but that's Guathme. Georgiana Guathme.
And then George.
Here's Georgiana. But then interesting that John Jeffrey.
So I'm guessing that Jeffrey must be like this plot.
I would
And then,
assume. I
right,
think
this
there
is
was something
George.
on that. I think I read that somewhere that there.
So that would mean that Jeffrey's next to George.
That is a little
Wow.
strange.
I wonder
Nice
if they ever
taking
met.
second place. Whoa. Yeah, they could have, right?
Yeah. He was in Louisville
Yeah. Sure.
measuring the
Doing that.
streets to
Sure.
set
That-
up the.
That happens. Second
Yeah.
husbands meet first husband. It
Of course.
happens all the time.
Yeah, so he got to Louisville actually just today when I was looking at that notebook. His notebook from it's like 1837, 1841, and I think it's like beginning of October 1838. He's in Louisville, maybe earlier than that, but that was the earliest date I saw.
Right.
So that's a couple years living in Louisville. I bet that he did meet George at some point. I mean,
Yeah.
George was
A civic
an
leader.
important figure.
That's right.
And John Jeffrey was an engineer who
You
was doing important work for the city.
Yep. Yep.
I never really thought about that before. I just always thought, Jeffrey shows up afterwards, but
So I found out today that I think Naomi Kirk is a distant relative of the Speeds. There's
Oh, yeah?
a Speed who, in one of the documents I was looking at, it said there was a note that said Miss Kirk is like the the grand niece of this Mrs. Speed, which would kind of add something to this interesting way where this way that kind of self-interest or kind of involved interest, then it kind of you get engaged in certain ways, but then the story kind of blossoms and takes control a little bit, and then those negotiations when you kind of have to think about like, okay, what did you get in the investigation for? Right, you found out these new things. Is it worth pursuing? Is it worth, pretty fascinating.
yeah. Oh, sorry.
So to make a little timeline of, 60s through 1890 or even mid 1890s when we have, Day doing his stuff, right? And then to kind of see if we can put in there
this idea.
Yeah.
But so even just like this act of commemoration, right? So this is reckoning 79,
Yeah.
and they move George, right? And they move Isabel, right, from their
I think so.
first resting spots, and then they bring it here. So this.
And this is, so 1879 is when Georgiana dies.
Goes here. somehow.
Georgiana.
Do you think this
Augusta
still record?
Wiley, that is.
Right.
One downside to reusing all the names is it gets a little confusing.
It really does. It really does.
So I was reading a thing earlier. Apparently, there was a daughter named Rose who died at like 5.
That's correct. Very young.
And was supposed to be exhumed and brought here when a cemetery closed in like the 1840s or something like that. But I guess it's unclear, like some of that didn't work out as it was supposed to. So there's actually, I was reading a thing about a book on Louisville's like ghost stories,
Right.
haunted buildings and
Right,
stuff like
sure,
that. And
sure.
it mentioned that near where this old cemetery was, there's supposedly these like ghost children who haunt about.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm trying to figure out what's up with the anchor over here.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the idea is that it's on the back of Philip Speed's. You have this big anchor,
Look at that.
and I think it's supposed to be attached to Emma Keats Speed. So that means that she's anchored to him?
Double anchor.
I don't know who's the boat. And
What's this here?
I think
Looks
it's a
like
bouquet.
carrots. Oh, it's a bouquet, of course.
Carrots? It does look like carrots.
You're right. It's definitely a bouquet.
So 1883, that's the same
Yeah.
year her son
Yeah.
publishes
That's right.
his book. I don't know. I can't remember when he dies. Not long after. I think it's like 1889.
I think you're right.
You know, I was thinking about how Jeffrey must have been pretty wealthy with all his gas companies. It does sort of explain,
Right.
you know,
Right. That he
how he would afford this
That's
massive
right.
monument. After this, we should try and track down that door.
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's give it a shot.
Yeah. I'll say, like, you know, I don't know who we're addressing. Are we addressing an audience or talking to one another? Just be like, so we're here at Cave Hill Cemetery.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to each other.
Yeah.
Come on.
I think they're
Oh, are
looking
they?
at stuff.
All right.
I guess we can allow them that.
Interested parties. This is the burial site of the great poet the brother of the great poet John Keats. So yeah, so this
That is
So this
Keats'
is
brother?
yeah,
That's
this
George
is
Keats,
George
yeah.
Keats is John Keats' brother, and
Are
so
you Keats fans?
I love poetry.
all
I
right.
love
Yeah.
Keats.
great, yeah,
I didn't know that we had a Keats in our cemetery.
yeah. George Keats in the mid 19th century was a model Louisvillian.
Yeah.
And then John Jeffrey was in charge of setting up a lot of the gas lighting in Louisville at the time, and George passed away in the mid.
You're getting the perfect tour guide.
mid.
We only know about
Mid.
this. though.
That's right.
Anything else?
Mid
You
19th
guys
century.
from Louisville?
We're not. Central Illinois.
But we're English professors, and we write about Keats, and we're doing a little research trip here.
Yeah.
Is this place great?
It's Louisville's great. Yeah. Are you from Louisville?
I'm from the New York area.
Uh-huh.
My family here, they live in Arkansas, and we all just kind of met
Uh-huh.
up. and
Nice.
We're showing this inspiring photography.
All right. Great.
Some history.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. This is Mill Street.
Yeah. Extra storage.
So I mean, but it
space.
is what it is, right? I mean, it's exactly like, it's industrial. I guess
Yeah.
it's not industrial, it's storage, but it's non-residential. It's
Auto
of course by the
parts.
river. They were then using the river power to power the mills, but yeah, parts.
Well, so here's the thing. That's where Mill Street was. The mill was actually a
By
little
the
bit
river?
closer to the river.
Shall I go
so
that
let's
way?
go over there.
All right,
so
let's
take
go.
a right on
Down by the river.
Witherspoon, which is this, and we'll go to River Road. And then take a right. And
Right, it's like industrial for a little while, transitional, and then it's like, but when when you're right by the river,
yeah,
totally regentrified.
right. Recreational space.
Recreational
for,
space for the wealthy.
Yeah. So take a left there. You can park in this lot.
So that's the pedestrian bridge
Yeah.
there, clearly.
And we're now basically on the site of the mill.
Wow.
This is like where it was. And it's a little more crowded now than
As it was then. I was wondering, is that like this tight parking back when George was here?
Just had a hitching post.
Uh-huh. They weren't really in a, or were they in a space?
Maybe.
Yeah. Were they? Oh yeah. Ah.
Nice.
Should we get out for a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's walk around. Taking the
Taking the
mill.
charge. Yeesh. There's a mill. See, there's some water going into.
Oh, look at that. So the mill is the wheel, huh?
I made that up, but I think so. It's pretty good, right?
Sure.
Why not? Satanic mills weren't all wood mills,
Right.
right? Sawmills. They were like mills because they got wheels.
Yeah. But they grind flour, that's good.
Absolutely.
Let's go look at the mighty Louisville.
Do it.
I mean, the Ohio. The water that once fueled empire through the sawing of wood now entertains our children. That's me being
A little melodramatic. But look in there, there's a, it looks like in the river, there's a Sawyer right there, right? These obstructions right in the river. That's, so that's what they, yeah, the Sawyers were these, right? I think this is in Gigante, right? So these are these trees that are down, they float in the river for a while, and then they get caught. And then what happens is that with the river current, they rise up or they sink down, they rise up. So it's like a saw, and then ships hit them, right? Or they sail easily over them, or, right, they whack right into them and are utterly destroyed, right? Which is, and of course, George's fortune was twice sunk by bad boats.
Right.
I don't know. I forget if they were both. They were not Sawyers. The first time was actually somebody essentially stealing the boat, taking it down to New Orleans. The second time was just a bad loan that he made. So we can't really blame the Sawyers, but I kind of want to. So much easier to blame a tree.
Yeah. That's what you always
I've
say.
never
You're
seen
always blaming
a
trees.
thing more guilty than a tree.
Yeah. So this is after George's failures with a couple other endeavors. This is the site where he had a successful sawmill.
And now there's a water park.
Yeah.
Crazy. Looks like a great water park.
Yeah, it looks nice. The Keats kids would, I'm sure, have had a good time.
I don't know. No idea.
The water feels nice.
Yeah, a little
Spray.
spray, a little mist.
So I think we go down here. There's a better opening, so we can look out onto the river and talk about that a bit.
I wish I knew more about like how the wood would they pour the timber into the water and then float it down to the mill, or no idea.
Who the hell knows how that works? I don't even know what a mill is. What are those barges? Trash? Is that a trash barge? Is a trash barge a thing?
Oh yeah. Mostly in New Jersey.
Right. Well, New Jersey's just one big trash
Hey.
barge.
From Jersey. But that is right. So what we're looking at down here, right, is, so here's this, right, this kind of, is it an island? Did you see them? It's a little island, but, right, so truly if you kind of went to the tip of that island, and then if you went then from that island off to the right, everything along the shore there, that's kind of where the mills were stationed, and George's mill was in that area right there. So it looks like right now, it looks like some marinas back there. It's kind of been a bit of maybe a gentrified kind of riverfront, but that's where it would have been, right over there.
But this is also important for the history of negative capability, because in 1845, when John Jeffrey sent his letters to London off to Richard Monckton Milnes.
He didn't just email them?
He didn't email them. No,
Crazy.
they didn't
text
have
them. Didn't just.
They didn't have email in Louisville yet. That was
right. Still working
in
its
New
way
York,
down the
of
Eastern
course,
Seaboard.
but-
Of course.
so. It's not entirely clear, but most likely that mail would have left
on a
Louisville, went up the Ohio River
Oh.
by steamship to Philadelphia or to New York, one of the major ports in the Northeast, and then would have gone across the Atlantic by steamship. And by the 1840s, so when John Keats is sending his letters from London to Louisville in 1818, 1920, that's
Still-
before the era of transatlantic steamships.
Right. So it's still
And-
romantic. It's still the breath of
That's right,
the
of
wind
the
sailing
the west
right.
wind or the
Right,
east
right.
wind.
Now
or-
it's men of power
That's right,
taking
and
over.
it's coal.
coal.
It's
Coal.
John Jeffrey's fossil fuel industry.
Whoa.
So-
Jesus.
But
John Jeffrey's fossil fuel into.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
tell you what, though,
It's
it's much better at delivering the mail.
That's true.
More
That's
reliable, a
true.
lot quicker.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is the point from which the transcript of the negative capability letter went on its way and
Amazing.
eventually made it to Richard Monckton Milnes in London. That's how it gets into print. What we don't know is if John Jeffrey, in a act of ceremonial rebellion, threw the manuscript into the river, the original manuscript.
Right.
Which would mean that we gotta go
spend so
diving.
much time. Spend so
Let's
much
get our
time
scuba gear.
transcribing these things. Let's just hop in right now.
Yeah,
It's just a 15-foot drop here. We don't know.
it's a little dirty. Thanks to John Jeffrey's fossil fuel
Fossil
industries.
fuels. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I just spent all this time transcribing this stuff. I've just sent off this. What an act of faith that is, right? Is to even so. Okay, there's an act of security there, right? Because it's like I don't quite trust sending the letters, and it's like I want to keep the letters. We want that, but it's like, okay, one copy and all these hours of labor, put it in a packet, send it off, and then to just kind of trust that it's going to make it down there. It's crazy.
Well, as we know from our work at the archive today, the Filson Historical Society, John Jeffrey liked making copies of
He did.
his
That's true.
correspondence,
That's true. Of his own
his
correspondence.
business
Yeah, yeah,
correspondence,
sure.
right? He had an
There was
interest
probably,
in making copies
course,
of that. He
very-
was
a
quite
good
the copier.
legal interest in that.
But
Yeah.
yeah, even in the 1840s, 1850s, I mean, the postal system was still not free from error.
Right. Sure. Please.
And actually, one of the series of letters I was looking at, he's writing to Veracruz in Mexico, to a company that's establishing a gas works there. And he has to write a couple different letters because the first two don't get there.
Wow.
They do eventually arrive, but
Sure,
it takes
but it takes forever.
takes a long time.
Sure.
So he writes another letter in the meantime saying, you haven't received my first, so here's another one.
Sure.
And what's funny about that is that one of his business associates had actually been in
Already
Mexico.
been there, right.
So
The
the
human
human
gets there
travel,
before the letter does, right.
But the letter
Sure.
took months and months
Sure.
before it actually arrived.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is. I mean, it's an act of faith in
Sure.
1845 to send off those transcripts. But
Yeah. And Keats recognizes that in his transatlantic letters. But that also provides him with, right, there are times in one of his letters to Georgiana, he says, like, our distance allows me to talk to you in ways that I don't think that I would if we were together, right? Which is also then, right, I have a feeling that we should maybe think about how negative capability kind of arises, right? Keats had his own individual solitary kind of epiphany about it, but we only know about it because he decided, because his brothers were at a distance and he had to share. And we don't, so far as we know, he didn't share it with anybody else. Nobody else said, oh my God, right? We don't have anybody, right? Hayden doesn't write like, oh, Keats told me about this amazing idea of negative capability he had. The only thing we know is that negative capability is also, right, it has this positive capability of somehow crossing distances, right, is kind of built into it in a way.
And even when he says, in the letter, at once it struck me.
Right.
He doesn't say, and then I told
Right, and then, yeah,
Dilk
exactly. And then I dined out
whoever
on it
else,
for
right,
another,
yeah.
for a fortnight, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Come on, that's good shit. Hey, look at this. Look at this. Jeff, get this. There's this huge ship coming down here.
You think they got any letters on it?
No, it's all coal.
Trash.
It could be trash. It's well covered. It could be coal.
Coal? From where? Kentucky? Do they ship coal on slow-ass barges?
Sure.
What? Look how slow it is.
I think it's a little bit. We
Clearly
didn't.
we
We
know
didn't just
nothing.
see that 5 minutes ago.
Coal? Hey, what if we do a little Nasser thing here
Sure.
and say, do like the thing like, excuse me,
Here's
Ann,
what I
can
want.
we butt in here?
I want to
for
do a
a
thing
minute?"
where I just open my mouth like this and then Jeff just shoots it. Looks like I eat it. Actually, what we just did could have been that could be our.
No,
a
but
big
I think we could address it
right, okay.
directly and
Right.
do the whole like interrupting and say like, talk about to pretend like we're there at answer and then you
Going up to say
on the screen saying over your mic.
where did you actually duck the inside of my shoe. It is sandy.
Yeah, this is what I was like, should I was going to say,
Oh,
and then I was like, should I wear that? Or like, you know, like, okay. So I could. I'm gonna wear a black jacket.
And my sister was like, wow, you look like a mess because like everything is unmatched.
that is fun.
somebody hasn't theorized, there's something that has to be called like archive time. Like it's if time is relative. Like there's a thing called
time in a bottle.
well, it's archive time. Everything's slower. Everything's slower with archive time, right? Everything takes longer. Everything, right? It's archive time. It is actually kind of about it is about a kind of slow ripening, right? You're not going to get anything. Ain't going to happen fast. Ain't going to happen all at once. You're not going to have the kind of dream of like stumbling upon, the treasure chest. It's like archive time.
Foster child of silence and
this-
slow time.
Archive time. That's exactly right.
Follow this 864.
We go right down to Kesey Avenue. By the way,
Book.
what's in there?
Which book? Because the Keats family. Because Crutcher, I think, mentions there's like someone who gets Keats Avenue named Keats Avenue. That might be difficult to.
I'm going straight. I'm making an executive decision.
Yeah, that was correct. You can actually go. Sorry, I forgot I was now.
See, we're out of archive time. Now it's
Yeah.
all confusion
So
and
fast.
lost and fast and digital.
Yeah, you're gonna go in 2 blocks, take a right on Main Street, which is also Route 60 and 42 and 31 East. It's a lot of roads. So this is 50 years after George died.
Wait, I turn on Frankfurt?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So 50 years after George died, the city of Louisville named a mundane residential street in Crescent Hill filled with modest homes and apartments, Keats Avenue, the only civic reminder of his community I mean, maybe it was. Maybe one of the family members helped make that happen.
Right.
I feel like he probably would have said that there, but maybe it's in the other book. I don't know. I can't find it.
It is an interesting thing that it's a kind of right. George was fairly prominent, quite prominent,
Yeah.
and then to kind of get, I'm sure it'll be a lovely street. I can't wait to see it, but it does seem perhaps like too little. And of course it will seem like too little for us, right? We would want the interstate to be named the Keats Highway, right? But
No, but I prefer it being a
tiny little show. Of
unassuming
course, no, I get that
street.
there's something poetic about it, but
Yeah. Let's see, I think we're getting close to it. The real question is, do you prefer South Keats Avenue or North Keats Avenue?
I'm going to find out.
Yeah. I think I'm a North Keats Avenue fan personally.
We haven't yet, are you a John or a George? You're a John, I'm a George. That's the answer.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, we'll take it.
Yep.
James Street. Oh,
Oh,
there it is.
there it is. Hey.
What you got going there? Camera?
Yep.
Huh.
It's getting a flower shop, Keats Avenue. We're doing a little project on George Keats.
Oh, okay.
John Keats' brother, the poet.
Sounds familiar.
Lived in Louisville for a while.
Seems like I've already seen them in the news recently. For some
Oh,
reason.
yeah?
It seems like the local media is highlighting a lot of businesses here. The name sounds familiar, and I seem to remember that flower shop being.
Yeah. Well, I'm mostly getting the street sign because this street was named after the Keats brothers. Yeah, that's why it's Keats
I mean,
Avenue.
his relatives?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was John Keats was a British poet, but his brother moved to the United States in the early 1800s.
Yeah. That kind of stuff is interesting.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? This a promo or some kind, or?
No, it's just a project. They work for various institutions.
Now, what kind of camera is that? Is it taking moving images or just?
Not moving images.
Just. Okay. I've never seen a camera.
They come to the U.S. The point is actually, George has been inspired by the writing of a guy named Morris Birkbeck. He's got an area in Illinois called the Englishman's Prairie. They're thinking they're gonna settle there and kind of make their money and send it back, and everything's gonna be fine. They end up in Hendersonville in Kentucky. George goes off to the Englishman's Prairie. It is a shithole. But they end up in Louisville, and George gets established. He ends up buying into a sawmill. He owns a sawmill. It's on now. You still have Mill Street here in Louisville, but he starts to become very. He's a businessman, right, and a kind of a civic leader of Louisville. But George has these letters that he brought with him from the UK, from England. Brings these letters, and then John has written some beautiful letters in the meantime to George and his wife Georgiana when they're in the United States. But among the letters that he has is this amazing letter, the negative capability letter. And this is a letter that John wrote in late December of 1817 to his brothers, George and Tom, when they were in Teignmouth. And he comes up with this kind of notion. He says that he's walking home from the Christmas pantomimes with his friend Charles Dilke. We had not a dispute, but a disquisition. What it takes to create so it's like a conversation, a kind of a
where they disagree.
So Keats said it wasn't that, but it was like there's some interpretive openness there. In other letters, Keats says like Dilke can't do anything without making up his mind totally about something. So Dilke had some ideas that he was preaching to Keats. And then Keats was like, when all at once it came to me, what it takes to create a man of achievement, especially in letters, like Shakespeare, and he says that is negative capability. That is when one is capable of dwelling in mysteries, doubts, and uncertainties without any irritable reaching after fact or reason.
Say that again?
Yeah. He says, when all at once it came to me, what it takes to create a man of achievement, especially in letters, essentially a Shakespeare, right?
So is this like a man of genius?
That's exactly right. Yep. He says, and that is negative capability. That is when one is capable of dwelling in mysteries, doubts, and uncertainties without any irritable reaching after fact or reason, right? So Keats as a poet, right? So he's kind of investigating what does it take to work the imagination, right? So his mechanism is the imagination. So does the imagination work when it is directed and when it is reaching? And he argues, he says, that's not when it works. When it works is when it's relaxed, right? So in another letter, at one point, he says a few things about it. So critics have, of course, attached this statement to all sorts of other pronouncement by Keats in his letters. So one is where he says that he's a fan of what he calls delicious, diligent indolence. In another letter, Keats says, I would rather be the flower than the bee. Right, this busy bee who's like making stuff. He's like, why?
That's it. That's the one.
And in the midst of that, he's coming up with this totally different idea of poetry. Totally different, although there are hints of it in the poet Coleridge, in the kind of theorist Hazlitt. There are hints of this, but this is why, and so negative capability becomes kind of the nugget of this idea, right? This is the vein of this idea, and it's in this letter, and it is a moment where Keats writes this, and there's no other record of it than in this. But it turns out we don't have that letter. That letter, so far, is lost to us. We only have that letter because in early to mid 1840s, after George has died, Georgiana Keats remarries this Scottish engineer, John Jeffrey, who is doing the gasworks lighting in Louisville.
He's the gas man.
He's the gas man. This is where men of power come in.
Right.
Men of power, electric power, not quite electric yet, but gas power, come in. And this is one of the miracles of literary history. Somehow, he sees a notice in either a newspaper or Brian and I are kind of working on how he might have actually seen this. He sees a notice that there's a guy back in England, Richard Monckton Milnes, who's putting together a collection of Keats, essentially memorabilia, stories about Keats, letters, this kind of collection. And Milnes, this notice says he essentially has everything. It's going to come out in the next few months. John Jeffrey somehow miraculously sees this in Louisville. This notice makes its way down the eastern seaboard, New York, Philadelphia, down, somehow makes its way to Louisville, somehow sees it. Again, Brian and I, we think we have an idea about how he saw it at a shop called the Literary Depot, but that's for another time. But he miraculously sees us. He sends off a letter right away to Milnes and says, you don't have everything. I'm sitting here in front of this kind of short stack of Keats' letters that you don't have. And then he was like, I'm going to start transcribing them for you.
All right. So why
Yeah.
did Keats's brothers, widows, new husbands care at all? I don't have any of my my stepmom's brothers.
That's right. If your stepmom happened to be Emily Dickinson, you might.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Well, but,
Or so here's the thing is that, and so we're not quite yet at this stage like established Emily Dickinson.
Wasn't he like
Not-
totally unknown?
Not quite totally. Not quite.
No! No! Let me give you. Let me give you this.
No, you should be in the shot. Here, you should take over. Here, do you need my lavalier?
It's amazing. I'm going back and watching some of his other work.
Okay.
So the question that the second John, so he's a fan, whether through his wife. Or
He's not even a fan.
He's not a fan.
He wants to make money. I'm sorry.
You think it's?
I'm
No, I
sorry.
think it's cultural capital. You think it's
No,
money.
It's money.
Why? What money is he going to make by doing these transcripts?
1844.
Yeah.
Hey, John Jeffrey sends a letter to William Breckenridge of Louisville with a cut-out signature of John Keats's
Signature.
from a letter John Keats sent to
the signature.
Literally, yeah.
Cuts
no,
the-
you
yeah.
can't. It's difficult to imagine.
in that letter.
that's hurtful.
In that letter, he says, "I would give you the entire letter,
Look
but
at you. But look at you.
I have some intentions to publish this correspondence
Right.
at some point on my own." When he writes Richard Monckton Milnes the next year in May of 1845, he says more or less the same thing. He says, "I intend to publish this stuff on my own at some
Were
point,
people
but my
still under the delusion then that they would somehow make money by publishing poetry?
dude,
'Cause
have you seen the fucking newspapers in that era? Milnes makes money.
Yeah, Mills, but he's
Yeah.
he's the Uber collector.
But he's asking
Jeffrey
for the
could have
stuff.
been.
He's
Yeah.
asking
Jeffrey
for the
could have
stuff.
been. Okay, so there's money to be made. Small potatoes for Jeffrey, who owns all these
Right.
vast
It throws
properties.
out. It throws out the cultural capital
Cultural
thing
capital.
a little bit. I mean, he could be doing
my-
both.
I
My
think
theory
there's
is
some
cultural
of that. No, I
capital.
think it's both.
It's
I think
romantic,
it's both.
and we want to believe it.
I think it's
He's
both.
a man of power.
It's both. He's definitely a man of power. Nice work with the terminology. You've taught him well.
Knew that it could be important. Also, kind of like a family heirloom of some
Exactly.
kind.
It is a fair.
Oh yeah. I will say,
I don't know.
John Jeffrey
I don't
had a
think-
lot of stuff. He kept a lot. I mean, a lot of his papers had gone to the Filson Historical Society. So as a businessman, he kept a lot of his records of various
Yeah.
arrangements.
We've
and-
read a lot
yeah,
of them.
They're really
They're-
boring.
The coal and coke.
So boring.
and-
Sorry,
Coal
Daniel.
and the coke
No,
and
no,
the
That's a
lime.
boring reading.
Yo,
Yeah.
for fucking sure.
But every once in a while, you get a moment where it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
No.
John Jeffrey.
Yeah, he's doing
fucking
some
A,
sketches
man.
in the
Yeah,
margin.
He draws a little
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, these crazy
Yeah.
things that he does.
Little
yeah.
picture of himself making money on his own. 2, making money from Milnes. 3, cultural, not even cultural, just family. This is what the family wants, right? And he says in his letters to Milnes that the children of George Keats want to ensure that they have a good, I don't know, record of their uncle's life.
Right.
Oh, because George
Which
had
actually
kids.
then does work out because of course then Emma marries Philip Speed.
Yeah.
Right? This is a Louisville, an established. This is the Louisville family.
Right.
Or one.
And
of
then and number 4 is cultural capital, right?
Hold on. So, sorry. So, Georgia. Is it Georgia?
Georgiana.
Georgiana and George had children.
Yes, like 8.
When you say
Look,
cultural capital, do you mean like this is important for humankind?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like that,
essentially.
he feels that.
Sure. You bet they
Have
felt
you?
that.
Do you guys feel
That's
that?
what we're doing this for.
Do you feel that?
That's the only thing we're doing this for. So, but let's be very clear. We are supported by actual capital because we've got a small grant from Illinois Wesleyan. We've got so we ourselves are putting in a little money So it's like you need capital to do this, but this story is about cultural inheritance, and it's vital. Negative capability is vital not only in Keats studies, it's not only vital in Romanticism, it's vital in psychoanalysis, in the theories of Wilfrid Bion. It's vital in ideas about the acceptance of Zen Buddhism in America. It's part and part. It's very Zen.
Eastern.
Yeah,
It sounded
that's right.
more like an Eastern ideal
Plen-
than a Western ideal.
Plenty of theorists have been working with
Which
that.
is really interesting because he's
Fascinating.
25 when he dies,
Yep.
and 23 when he wrote that.
Yep.
And so
Here's the terrifying thing, is that negative capability has become so important for Keats studies, for the study of Romanticism, it's so famous.
we
Here's
don't
the
even
thing,
know if it's his words.
This guy.
I
Who is
told you
this
he's
guy?
an acolyte.
Who is this guy?
He's an acolyte.
We have no idea. It turns out John Jeffrey is a notoriously terrible transcriber. And let me state for the record, we owe so much to John Jeffrey. The simple fact that he did that work. He is a hero. He is a friend of Keats. He is all of those things. But so far as we know, John Jeffrey's mistakes didn't have intentionality behind it. It wasn't like that he was saying, oh my God, this looks like this distant relative of this family I've married into is an atheist and I need to Christianize him.
It's like
it
he
wasn't
was
that
paraphrasing poorly. Something
Just-
like that.
just-
It's because he didn't care about these
he had
documents.
other stuff to do.
In
He
the
had,
way
he had to go to Cuba
Right.
to install gasworks. He had stuff
exactly.
to do.
Yeah. He was a
we were
businessman, yeah.
lucky to get any of his time. His free time in an evening. He was gonna hang out with Georgiana's kids or not? It's I'll transcribe a couple more pages of a letter. So look, Daniel, so here's the thing, is that this letter is wildly famous, wildly important, and there has so far been no systematic search to try to find it. Look, there's a really, really great chance that the letter is not there to be found anymore. It's disappeared. It's been lost.
It's in a landfill.
But that's right. But here's my thesis, is that before the next person writes the next big kind of theoretical essay about negative capability, because there are lots of theoretical essays that also are high theory and they read the tea leaves of negative. It's what does the letter say about what? In order to do that well, it's
you need to find the original.
That's exactly right. I want everybody to keep doing that. I love it. It's great. It turns up great stuff. It's problematic, but it's also great. But if you do that, you also have to spend at least a day or two actually searching for the real letter that has negative capability in it. You just got to pay your way into the world of fact to get into the world of negative capability.
Do you think it's in Louisville?
Not at all.
No. I think it's in